Okay. So, what have I been up to? Well, winnings and failings. I have reached the point where I feel like I have the power of code creation as fast as I can think about it. But the issue is now what to think about. Plus, when you get to the actual nitty gritty of it, like I still haven't installed the CRM database piece, and I had a couple of snags here and there, which I'll explain my lessons and experiences there. But frustrated is all hell, I think, is how I'm doing. Like, I've got this incredible power to just call upon or summon code, and it's good code, and then, but I still can't seem to do exactly what I want. It's like a curse of you can like magically teleport anywhere on Earth, but if you pick somewhere you want to go, it'll always drop you 100 Ks off and you got to walk the last little bit. Like,
Hmm.
it's
Yeah,
that
I know
kind of
what you're
frustrating.
saying. It's
Yeah.
when you're Aladdin's lamp analogy. You're asking a wish, and we got unlimited wishes, and you always get tripped up by a big adjective,
Yeah,
like
or like
almost,
it's like yeah, and
almost like.
the genie is actually a great metaphor for all of this because uh, asking for, I think those whole fables about the genies are about the fact that when you only give like a one sentence wish, the number of things that could fulfill that wish and also that you would hate
Right.
are large, right? And so, what's the answer? Well,
Yeah.
you can either have a genie that hangs out with you for years on end and knows you intimately and has access to all your private thoughts and notes and everything, and so that when it guesses at what you meant, it gets it right. Or you're going to have to take the time to go back and forth with this genie where different scenarios are put forwards and you're like, you said you wanted to be rich, but all these people died so you could have it. You didn't want that? And you're like, no, man, I would, like you try and reason your way through it. And then it almost ends up being that it's not the genie that you're at war with. It's something like nature itself has this really frustrating property that no matter what you do, it always kind of like whenever you think you've won, you've lost somewhere else. And it's not always apparent that
Yeah.
somewhere else where you lost. It's almost like, in the most biblical sense, there's a phrase in there about how the earth was cursed. And so no matter how you toil, you'll always get weeds and thorns. And it sort of feels like we're like, haha, we got AI, we can do all this stuff. And now there's this new crop of thorns and weeds all around the place that weren't even there before or didn't even know they were there. And now we're sort of not back to where we started, but the feeling is the same. You're like, this is awesome, but it also sucks. Um, because it's like
I
it's
had
nature that we're fighting.
I
Yes.
agree, and so I spent um maybe 2 hours doing a deep dive to ask what's the best way to avoid those thorns. Didn't call them thorns, but ambiguities and so on. And after walking through the foothills of the obvious stuff, make sure that put the cognitive load on the human to get it absolutely right. Um, Started to get into some quite interesting areas. One of which was it proposed that the ideas of Buckminster Fuller's topography is actually a good way to think in terms of um, there are no axioms because um, there are if you ask something, there's always a bigger context which is required in order to consider that. not a topic for now, but a very interesting topic nevertheless.
All right.
I took copious notes.
Okay, that does sound interesting.
But there.
Right. So,
right.
two areas of progress for me. The main one is the cool one, so I'll show that because everyone loves a cool thing. I found a new tool that I now much prefer to v0.dev, and it is called bolt.new, and it's like v0, but it's more it's better because it's not specific to Vercel's infrastructure, and it can install any npm module, whereas v0 is restricted to an initial set of modules. This is the interface here, and so one of the things that I did was I chatted with it to make for example, a chat UI that was a clone of this chat UI that I'm using, because I actually love their UI. I think this UI is fabulous, and so I found a technique that I am getting good results out of to clone an interface that we like. So if you find a website or something that you think is cool, what I did here was I went to the website, I used the inspector to grab the DOM, so like the actual HTML DOM node, copied it, pasted it into the bot, so you can see that being pasted way up here. So this is the DOM. Yeah. And then take a screenshot of the UI as well and attach that in and be like, here's the DOM, here's the screenshot. Make him the thing.
Okay.
Right.
Which works for static websites.
Well,
I've got questions, but
no, it works for a lot of websites, because even dynamic websites, still the DOM is all you see. So you can learn a lot from the DOM because you can understand which UI libraries and techniques they were using, like were they using React, were they using ShadCN for the UI, all that. You can figure out how they arrange things, like what's a child and what's a parent, what's the importance, what are the accessibility labels. Like there's a lot of stuff there. But what you end up with is so like this is an example of, like, I didn't polish it that much more, but that's, and the text is a bit, the text isn't off color, but the point is I can chat with it, and I'm like, okay, the background of the messages hides that, so I can't see it. Also, I need some visual distinction.
So it's rendering this how in the preview as a browser, I'm guessing, browser session.
So what it's doing, you will see it happening here. It's now whirring away thinking. They've kept it. This is from the guys that made StackBlitz, and so they took the StackBlitz browser-based dev environment and then slapped a bot in front of it, and it works really well. And so the odd sort of restriction on v0.dev was that I could ask it to make an app that used a library off of npm, and it couldn't run it and show me the preview because it could only use a narrow set of pre-installed npm libraries. But this one can install any npm package and use it, right? So it gives me full blown, very lightweight, minimalistic UIs that are, like they're kind of done right in a way.
And they've got rollbacks as well, so they would
The
store some
rollback,
sort
yeah,
of
the
footage
rollback's
just in
not,
browser.
yeah, it's not so great, but it's in reality, it's more than enough to use. But the thing that I thought you would find interesting is that I can. So this is the file tree that it created all of this from blank for me, because it like figures out what template it should use, grabs in the template, and then goes around editing these things. But what you'll find really interesting is that I can select a file, and then I can say target file, which means that the AI will only work on that file. And I can do it for whole folders where I'm like, target all. Or I can additionally pick some files or folders and say lock. So no matter what you do, don't touch those ones. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's actually a really useful feature, to be able to scope the bot in this way. But yeah, this tool is really good, man. And so where I got to with it was, can I show you two more examples before you get bored?
I'm not getting bored at all here.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. So this was where I'll make that 3 examples because you might like this one. This is where I was like, hey, why don't I try and get it to make an impact crystal using a 3D rendering engine.
Oh, nice.
So that was. This is interesting because it's all running in the browser. Like the instance of Node, they've made a technology called web containers, which runs basically a Linux container, sort of a stripped down one, in your browser, and then that's what gives you your all your stuff. So yeah.
Nice.
Now this one had some errors. And where are we? Yeah, so this one was an example of generating a UI chat framework from scratch. So that was quite good. What I'll do, I might just load some of these fucking things up because they seem to be taking a while. Just because we're on the demo and all. The main one, I mean, I could probably fucking skip a lot of it here. This was the table component that I made for the CRM. So this was the chat that made it, which was pretty brief. I mean, I didn't really say much. I was just like, here's an error,
Right.
this,
Yeah.
right, add a
So
column to
in
the left.
our terminology, this is a render, and the point of a render is to allow the human to point out what's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I'm just, going back and forth. I can hear my CPU straining. Not entirely sure why. It could be all the stuff that you've made me do, like share screens in VR with a webcam on a live Riverside recording while sharing the screen, and then replaying that screen back into the VR thing to be recorded.
Because you're on Windows, that's why. Windows bloatware.
Mister, I couldn't share my screen for how many months?
It's barely a few weeks.
That's what a month is. Did I run this right? Yeah, it is working. It is and it isn't. What the
Hang on.
hell?
I'm keeping an eye on Riverside now just to make sure the recording's still going, and it is. Excellent. Might
Yeah,
actually have usable output on this one.
that would be good. Why is my stuff not working? It's very strange. Anyway, so where I got to was that making storybook was the way to go, because I made a storybook that had the components that I wanted to work on, and in that way I figured I could use the, first of all, storybook is like narrowing down the renders significantly so that they can allow you to view the renders in a component form, as opposed to, like, the issue is that the bot often does these changes to the code base in a sweeping, and it sort of treats all the components like one big component. But by using storybook, like, it seems like the tactic for making the most out of the LLMs is actually the same tactics that you have to apply to get the most out of a team of developers, which is have conventions in place to make sure they don't collide, make sure that they can work on isolated pieces together, make sure there's ground rules that everyone sticks to, and make it so that I can inspect their work without having to read every single line, which is kind of the limiting speed at which you can AI generate code. Is if you're stuck requiring you to read through each line, you're in trouble. So there's that.
And does it? I assume it hooks into whatever API key you want to give if you want to put an AI agent up there.
I haven't.
It should be, I'm guessing.
Probably, but I haven't done that. Yeah, I haven't done that because I've just been generating components. And
yeah, okay, that's fine.
if I could, for the life of me, make one show,
The project is running on their server or a local server?
it's all running in the
Their
browser
server.
here, but it's just they need to be able to connect one tab to another tab, which is a funny thing to need. Yeah, I don't know. I'm on a different computer to where I had all this set up and running, so I don't know why it's being so difficult. But the overall point is, I learned some big lessons today about how to get really good code generation going for UI. And it's using this bolt.new with a storybook so that I can work on an isolated component one at a time. And then, this generator is pretty good. Then when it comes to backend work, then I use O1 Pro. Oh, here we go. So this is a table component that is actually quite complex, and this is what we're going to use for the CRM. But it took me, it would have taken maybe 20-25 minutes to chat this up, and if I can, I'll go through all the features that are in it because it's quite subtle. It's a lot of features in a small space. Yeah. So first of all, it's a virtualized table, which means that it's got a very large number of users. But by being virtualized, it means that the performance works because the table is actually not rendering all the items in a DOM. It's only rendering the visible ones, which you'd think is how things should work, but they don't actually in a browser. And so if you make a list of 30,000 items and you don't virtualize it, your browser will just crumble to its knees. And so adding that in can take a significant amount of time as you're dicking around with how does it load and how does it do this and do that. It's a very fiddly thing. This thing just went ahead and did it. being able to generate random data that's meaningful, like these customer code IDs, these are meaningful. These will be familiar to the trucking guys because they follow similar patterns to them. Was very easy to just chat about it. This sort, like sort up, sort down, sort none. You know, again, non.
Does search customers work? If you look for Alice, does that work?
Yep. But additionally, so you have Alice, but you can additionally search for a space means anything in between. Like if I go Ivy and then go space example, then that will pull in. You know what I mean? Like it's the space is made to represent a star, which is not default. Hotkeys.
Yeah. Okay.
So I can go select. I can go arrow up, arrow down, escape to get out of it. I can go / to get up into the search box.
Yeah,
and then
they've copied the Google way of doing it because you don't put stars into Google search, and they've gone.
Yeah, that's right. And now there's the hotkey for help, so I can call up the help, and I get this help dialog that shows all the hotkeys. This is all coded. Each one of these features I asked for in chat. So it started with just a blank table, and then I added each feature by chatting, and then it went ahead and did them. And
that's nice.
I think that's remarkable, actually.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's it.
That is remarkable, and if it can do it, and there's a pre-stored definition, then we've got an element for a jitter. Because it's a pre-stored element,
yeah,
you can put in meta information about what it's meant to do.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That was like 30 minutes to make a component. Now, typically, making that component, like that's a huge job to make it. Normally, it's a huge job just to import someone else's pre-built component, familiarize myself with it, fiddle around with all the stuff. I'm embarrassed to say it, but I could have spent maybe 3 to 6 days to get this amount of stuff in that table just from fiddling around, fiddling here, fiddling there, reading code, compiling this, compiling that, debugging this. And that's just using someone else's component. This is a component built from nothing. It's not using a library or a pre-built component. It's using actual HTML elements and CSS to style it. Like, it's very pure what this thing is doing. So it's also performant. Like, there's no crazy massive library that it loaded up.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I like that a lot.
Right. So that's now, and then
you mentioned something called a storybook. Can you give me?
We haven't.
What storybook?
Yeah, sure, mate. That's probably one of the most fundamental things in my coding career. Actually, was the understanding of the componentization of code. And storybook is a way to make componentization of an otherwise complex thing. So here's an example, keeping in mind that this whole storybook was chatted up. I did not code this.
Have we moved to another service here, or is this still inside Bolt?
It's still inside Bolt, but it's what I can't seem to get is like the in Bolt preview is not working like I expect, and I'm not 100% sure why.
What's that enable button at the bottom there?
Where?
In your last screen.
Bottom. That's for visual test. That's not got anything to do with.
That's not what you're talking about.
No, absolutely not.
I thought I was about to
solve the problem.
Shame you there.
Did you just?
Yeah. But how about pressing that button? Damn it, that was close.
It wasn't close. It wasn't even.
It was worth a try, though.
I'm perplexed as to why this isn't working as smoothly as it said on the label. What does that
Could
say?
be something to do with immersed, of course.
Yeah, it might. It might indeed. Okay, I got one more trick up my sleeve to try and make this crap work.
While you're doing that, what I'm going to do is drag. So I don't want to leak information today, but I do have a final output.
All right, and finally made it. So, a storybook is a way of breaking up the UI into components and then testing each one individual. So, for example, the chat UI, this is an example of a chat UI where I'm like, hi there. It does some thinking and then it comes back. So that's all mocked. But to make this whole thing is actually a selection of components. And it's quite funny. Like, I actually spent maybe 2 hours total on Bolt today. But as you can see from the large number of things that I have to show you, the amount of code generation was obscene. Like, this was me really just assessing whether or not Bolt was going to meet all our needs. And it does. In fact, it exceeds them in some areas. But the amount of useful code, like, I'm going to use that table component. We're using that. Like, that's 30 minutes, but I'm like, that's actually great. I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
And so, you know, like, I'm like, this is where we're at now for some things remarkably fast. But anyway, the concept of componentization. So in a storybook, you take each component and you break it apart. And so for the messages, I'm like, well, this is a message. This is a message when it's the AI responding, and this is a message when it's loading. And so by getting the bot to write these stories of these components in different pieces, it allows me to really focus in on what each bit should do. So I can toggle, you know, I can toggle the parameters that go into the component. I can turn it loading or not loading, and I can really analyze whether or not the bot has made the complete thing in multiple states that the component's going to be in. And then I assemble those up into, like, here's the input piece. So that's where I type the input message, and I'm like, oh yeah, it looks a bit scrunched. So, you know, this scroll bar shouldn't be there when it gets narrow, for example. So I need to go back to the bot. When it goes into processing mode, does it look right? Is the pointer disabled? You know, all those kinds of things. And then when you assemble it all together, then you're like, here's all these components assembled. Does it work right? And so by getting the bot to purposefully be constrained to these components, the chance of it running off course is very slim. And so I can
Mhm.
chat with it rapidly about fixing an individual component or giving it some properties or some functionality that I need, and I can be very sure that it is the right thing, and it didn't mess with anything else. Because that's
Mhm.
the problem with these bots. You're turning them loose on the whole code base. How are you going to control that? You don't know that it made some like architectural error that you're like, I don't like what you did there, but YOLO. So that's
Sure.
that. That's that.
And that's what's the wiring between components like? How's that done?
So a container is an example of wiring between components, and it's really just simply saying that it's a React component that's made of child components, and so components can be ever gathered up into more and more complex pieces. The idea being that, like, if you built it up as components and you only sort of added a little bit of complexity at each layer, then at the very top you're just dealing with Lego blocks. Like, I might be like the chat history, the input box, the state board, and that's my top level. That's all I have to concern myself with up the top. But down below it might be
Mhm.
like, is the mic on? Is the microphone permission granted? Should I show an error here and there? So you just push all those details down to the edge of the graph. Sorry, the leaves of the graph,
Yeah.
the outer edge of the bad choice of words there, whatever. Um, so this is a
And
technique that it only loosely correlates to other kinds of code, but it's very strongly correlates to visual code or GUI code.
right. So it sounds like it's to use a very old term, like a loosely connected service-oriented architecture, as in each component contains within itself what it advertises it can do, and therefore in a jitter we can do a search and go, oh, you want this component? That's fine, and we know that a component advertises it can do this. Another component says I need that, and the bot can be highly constrained if we want
Yeah,
to wire it up.
maybe, but for right now, um, I wasn't using it like that at all. I was simply using it to be able to produce the pieces of UI code that we need right now. That's all.
Right,
In the
right.
future, the sort of the most extreme that I could see this technique moving to is being able to write the code on the fly, so that you could have a business owner come in and be like, "Oh, look, I need my button blue today," and then they just chat with it. The storybook comes up. It's like, "Well, you asked for it to be blue, but this is it showing when there is some history and when there's no history, and this is your change in all the
Right,
contexts that it
right.
might get applied. Are you sure you want to go ahead with it?" And they're like, yeah, it looks great. And then they go deploy, and off it goes. And so it's
This is
it's
lovely because everyone on the planet is an expert in UI, which is
that's the thing.
exceptionally difficult to deal with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and yet this if you gave them Bolt raw, and we're like, here's a tool that makes you wise, that almost certainly fluff it up. But if you gave them a
Mm.
storybook with, Bolt and some guardrails, they could probably get it right. I'd say
Hmm.
you could probably
Brilliant.
get it right.
That's brilliant. And yeah, in due course, each of these components can be stored because they're ultimately text,
Yeah.
advertised, discovered, and then brought in as a jitter or as
Yep.
a component of a jitter.
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
pretty
Yeah.
sure.
And then sort of what
Seems
level
self-serving.
you want to grab hold of it is kind of up to us. Like, you might want to bring it in at the level of, like, this is the input box. You might want to just use that, or you might want to call in the whole container, because maybe it's easy to grab hold of, maybe it's not. So, yeah.
Or you might want the AI to decide based on context and thread.
Yeah.
It chooses.
Yeah. So that was the Bolt stuff.
That is pretty sweet. I like this a lot.
This is
What's it
powerful.
deploy like?
What?
Where does it deploy to, or how does it deploy?
You mean when you push deploy?
Yeah, as in
That
you're in a sandbox here, right?
Yeah, it says it deploys to Netlify. I don't care about all that. I just care about the way I get the code out is I go export. I can either download it directly as files, or I choose to open it in StackBlitz, and from there I can download the code or push it to Git or
All right.
stuff like that.
Right.
Getting the code out is a
sounds
bit
really
cumbersome, but it's otherwise fine. I noticed that they have config, or they have prompt in there. Like, this is the prompt for the bot, and it's different for each template that you choose when you use Bolt. Like, it says what libraries to use. Yeah, it's interesting to see inside these very light prompts.
There it goes. There it goes. Look at that. That's I got a wee bit of a goosebumps rush there watching that. That is
Yeah, so
really quite nice.
yeah, so that's how
Okay.
that's how I want to make UIs going forwards. I think it holds immense potential. Certainly makes my life easier. I tried it on a bunch of things and was like, wow, this is great. So UI, I had been copying or pulling from the Vercel open source chatbot UI. I actually don't think I need to do that anymore, because that was becoming cumbersome. I was trying to maintain a traditional code base where I'd have to pull from them and then reconcile the differences and then all that. But I'm like, it's actually faster to just start from here and just, like, just get this thing to make it from scratch is actually way faster. So,
yeah, and I can see a route forward to jitters quite easily, but also at a push. That thing that we've been trying to do for years, where you go into a meeting knowing nothing about it. You have even a whiteboard session, box here, box there, box there. Take an image, and if the thing that we're asking the bot to do next is translate that into a storybook,
yeah.
then it can be rendered and
Yeah.
go, hey, look.
Yeah.
But that's probably not for now.
It might be a ways off, but what I think you could do is you could turn up to a meeting and have someone else sitting at a computer listening in on the meeting and working the prompts in the background to generate, as you're talking in your meeting, this other person's off there using Bolt to make wireframe versions of wireframes and mock-ups of what the UI should look like, and they're just able to do them in 10 minutes time, and you're like, here's this thing, okay, cool, yeah, no, I want that, I don't want that.
Yeah, nice, really nice. Okay.
All right, and the
Good
next
progress.
the next thing, shall I show you the next thing, or did you want to have a slot?
No, yes please, next thing.
No, yes please. Okay, so the issue is, I actually ended up trying to define the interface, the programming interface to Artifact, and it somewhat messed me up because turns out it's hard. Who saw that coming? But I also, just before we spoke, realized that what I really needed was to do some reasoning about it. So I'll just fix up this screen sharing thing here to now focus on my my entire screen. There we go. Okay.
Just check and see if we're still recording. Okay, sorry, carry on. I'm just checking we're still recording. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah. So anyway, I managed to define. That is Christ Almighty small, isn't it? I managed to define the artifact interface, and I think it's complete. Like, it certainly feels like I've been over it enough times. I've gotten the bots to check it for consistency. I've made it generate these reasoning definitions where it's like, okay, here's, what is the atomic store? What is the blob store? What's a blob? What's a branch? What are clients? What's the environment? All these, the definitions, because I realized that, surprise, surprise, my definitions were getting sloppy and I needed to clean that up because I was getting, the bot was sort of not quite getting the meaning of what I wanted sometimes. And that's sort of why I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Because the code's not enough. You actually need some extra background information. So I kind of have everything built now. I'm just busy joining it all together, really. There aren't any it's just quite fiddly, but nothing is missing, and I do believe this is the complete artifact interface except for execution. So it doesn't do any of the execution, it just does the data storage, and it does things like initialize a repository, clone it from GitHub, all those good things, really. And it does it in what I think is an ergonomic way for a developer to consume. Yeah, that's it. Would you wish any more details, or the high levels enough for you, or what's the?
That's good enough for me at the moment.
Okay. So this is the holdup. This is the holdup with the CRM, and it became very hard to just do a little bit of artifact. Like, it very quickly drags in a bunch of other concerns, and I was like, well, fluff it. I think I can hit the whole thing, and that's where my time went. But I think maybe tomorrow I'll have it all done. It's like it's been really hard. A lot of thinking, and a Christ almighty number of tokens have gone through O1 Pro, but it's I like it, actually. It's pretty good, and it's should be very fast, very cheap, and capable of storing very large files, and pushes and pulls to GitHub. So we can be running the CRM, and then the backup is to push the repo to GitHub in a private repository, and you're like, that's your backup, that's your offsite, whatever.
Well, that's your store of truth.
Yeah, and then from there, the idea is that once we've got that firm place to stand on, then we start bringing in, like, your work comes in as a repo on the platform, and then we can make you some simple bots to manipulate the files within that repo, and all the, like, the committing, merging, all that stuff is all handled for you by the platform, and then we can go into process management where you've got like 5 or 6 threads going on and all that. So that's where I'm at. I'm terribly sorry that it's not up and running yet, but the interface is looking really nice. all the components are there. The thing that's slowing me down is hooking them all up together. That turns out because it cuts across so many files and requires so much thinking about it, it doesn't lend well. O1 Pro can't do it because the number of files is large. Cursor can't do it because the intelligence required is large. And so who's left?
Yeah.
That's me.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that will get better, hopefully, as
Hopefully, huh?
context window. But yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
That was very cool.
All right, so that's it from me, man. I'm
Alright.
just working away, and I really I can see completion. I can see it. It's very close.
Well, I can I can't share because I haven't. There's lots of stuff on my screen at the moment.
Okay.
And I
Yeah.
don't
No
want to
worries.
put it up. But I can describe it. So the process I went through, I had saying quite I described what we were wanting to do in terms of attribution, pulling in the current um, axioms and definitions, and asked O1 Pro, has anyone thought about how on earth to create this attribution thing algorithm that we've got? Went round a few cycles, but interestingly enough, ended up on, I mentioned before, topography, which I had not thought of. And topography talks about, and I sent it over last night, um, the likes of convergence. So the back end of this, remember that in order to be independent of model, but healthily skeptical of any particular model, we've already got that process where you ask it a question, produce a thing, you produce it 6 times, and then what I'm doing with the wash part is running those answers through as a batch, but running it through 6 times to get a confidence level of each of the assertions. So that's the what do we agree, what do we disagree, and what are the minority reports. And then the final step is to take the original thing and saying, right, here is a consolidated review of what's changed. Please make the changes. That is working really well. So I took that process and talked to the bot about attribution and gave it some of our previous transcripts about attribution. And it quite quickly converged on, okay, so if you've got multi-dimensional impact crystal and these events, and you've got weightings, then topography is a good way, and I'm looking into this now. So there is, if you can iterate a number of times, you have a metric which is the duality of convergence and divergence. So if you're running it multiple times and they're coming out with very different answers, then you're diverging. Run it some more, it just gets worse. Or if you're converging, that's a good thing. So we've got a way of seeing whether something should be incorporated in terms of a change at the various levels, remembering that the levels are inside of the attribution. The base level is assessing things with like things. The second level is assessing the conclusion of the first level to weight different things. So, say the first thing is code, second level one is project management effort, and then the third one, one up, is how do you compare these? And it seems like this convergence divergence algorithm, which can be well expressed in maths, is the way to do it. It does burn a lot of tokens, though. There is, it also came up with the idea of proximity. I can't see your hand.
Oh, what? Why
I
not?
can't see your. No, I can't see. So we
What do you
might
mean
need
you
a
can't see
proper way
me?
of doing it. But
I can
well, I
raise
see
each
your.
individual finger and see it on the webcam. So, you know.
Well, I can't see you.
What do you mean you
I
can't
see
see it? Like, what
your
do you see instead?
name.
My name and what?
Yeah. And then I see your mic is on, and then you've got a bit of a lightning strike icon in a lozenge that's hovering where your avatar should be, but your avatar's not there.
Well, that's weird because on the video
It's like
screen, it shows me with my avatar. So I don't know what that is, but anyway,
anyway.
you
Applied
was
perfect.
you were saying about the convergence divergence being used to ascertain whether an event had occurred, right?
No, it's whether the new information is just noise and should be discarded and not added into the canon.
Yeah,
The
so
information, there's no information lost. It's the assessment. The
that
assessment is, does this diverge?
might be wrong because
Okay.
this thing should only be run when there was a revenue event. You're talking about running it every time something happened, a state change occurred, and now we're like, maybe we need to update the contribution record.
No, not quite. It's on a revenue event running these, and if it diverges, then it needs to go back down one layer and figure out why is this diverging. Why, for example, if there's another concept which is sent over called proximity, which is what's pertinent. So I've just given it two levels of proximity. It's the same sort of work and time. So you only consider things to be put into the attribution algorithm at the time running at timestamp t. But if you get divergence, there's a problem there, and maybe someone's put in just, a cock and balls in ASCII art, as it's part of the repo. And it's like, no.
So
Okay, and then it can sift
just to
through
check,
and remove.
just to check then, when does this algorithm run?
It runs a process of assessment at time t whenever we want. It would run on payment events only, but
Okay.
we could choose to run at any time.
Okay. Look, I'm gonna have to go, buddy. It's almost time.
Yeah, no worries, because I was late. I think that's probably good for me because I can give you what I was hoping to do last night,
Right.
but got waylaid.
Okay. I just want to really stress to you that all this work you've been doing on entity extraction or concept extraction from conversations, I think it's fundamental actually to the calculation of attribution, because if you can't get out the concepts that were talked about, you can't possibly hope to attribute to anything more than, say, just code or just the finished product or something like that. And so the knowledge exchange work is not extractable unless you have this topic extraction tool. And so it led me to think that there are many strategies by which you could do this topic extraction. And so there needs to be a set of benchmarks that assess performance of any strategy in this particular field. And, people should be free to supply different strategies here and there using our platform. And then, your bot picks the best one for you based on the uniqueness of its properties and what you want. The one that the benchmarks is the one that you select. The second place where this thing that you've been working on applies is in the extraction of concepts from chats so that we can stop we can stop having to hold on to our chats and really just bin the chats if we have good confidence that the information extractor got everything out that was ever going to be gotten out of it. Then you're like, now it's just a pool of facts and we can move on, and that's an important tool.
Yes, and actually, that's what we've been working on. Tomorrow, if you're around, or the next time, I'll give you a more coherent way of doing it because I can't show you the screen.
All right.
But the bot has proposed exactly that, and things like there's an event or a piece of evidence with provenance that is assessed against supporting evidence. And the interesting topography thing is what the proximity to other things it should also assess to see whether it's useful or not.
All right. Well, that sounds like a deep topic. I'll stop the recording and then I'll begin the upload of it. Yeah.
Say again? Oh, you're muted.
I'll stop the.
Oh, you're on. You're on.
I'll stop the recording.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.